This is how to mirror an object. So imagine this is something on a street and there's a big window in a store and it's reflecting in there or something to that nature. The big difference here is that the mirroring of the shadow, you'll notice that the first shadow on the foreground object goes to your normal horizontal direction, but the second shadow in the mirror is a reflection of that shadow. So the lighting is very different and we're seeing the backside of the original object. So let's go through the quick time lapse. Okay, so right there I drew my first object, and this second thing you see the green diagonal. I'm going to find the center, and then I'm going to do two reflection or two split details. So this first one I drew, let's get that snapped in there. The first green line on the other side is the front side of the object, and then the longer blue diagonals give me the back side of the object. And so that's how I'm mirroring this. The blue line running horizontal from left to right, the long one is the bottom of the mirror plane. So let's scrub through here. So I just started with squares just to make this easy. And you'll see I'm starting to cast the shadow there. And so is our normal shadow, and that looks all fine. And then this yellow line, I've extended one of the edges of the shadow direction, which is just horizontal, all the way to the mirror plane, and then mirrored it back to the object. And notice it's the opposite corner because it's a mirror reflection. And there's the second yellow line is the second side. And so that sets up my shadow direction in the reflection. And that's the key part, is just extending those yellow lines, extending the shadow angle, the ground angle, to the mirror plane and then back to the original object. So let's go back, I mean not back, keep scrubbing. And so you can see I've shaded in the shadows a little bit. Now, once we've got that kind of set up, I've went back through the original object and I just subdivided it and chopped off the top and bottom corner. And now I'm going to go into the shadow and do the same effect. And you can see the kind of teal lines. I found the beginning of that angle and the end of that angle, and then chopped off the corner of the shadow to go along with the shadow. And whoops, let me back up just a teeny bit. Right there, you can see the shadow direction lines, which on the foreground object are all parallel and horizontal. And then when they hit the mirror plane and they go back to the original object, they're not parallel anymore. They're going to their own vanishing point. So you could actually project all those up to the horizon, and those should link up. Now the back corner of the second object is a little tricky, and see if you could figure that out. So when you guys hand in your artwork, if you're doing it on an iPad or something rather, if you could leave the underlying layer in the original, kind of like I did Ghosted, so I could see your construction methods. It's really hard to figure it out if that's not there. If you're doing it by hand, just keep that, leave it in there lightly, and then darken up the original object so I can really see it. So let's zoom in here and see what's going on. Because I looked at this and I was like, oh, I think I made a mistake, but I went back and looked at it and I was like, oh, actually, no, I didn't. So if you went with the original object, which went down to here, and to here, and to here, and to here, the shadow comes off of this corner and heads over there, and goes over here, and goes over to there. Now this first side is really easy because we're just cutting off this corner. And so if you notice, it's the same thing. This is halfway here and halfway there, and I just cut the diagonal. And so if I went halfway up this line and halfway across this line and cut that diagonal, that would do the same thing for me. I could also subdivide this up if I wanted to and go through this whole structure, but you'll see it's the same thing, so I just shortcut that. Now this corner over here, nothing, you're not going to see anything because it's all buried in the shadow. So this is the one, and this is just kind of goofy that this just happens to line up. You can see if I follow the orange over to here, this goes all the way back to the original. But they almost just line up exactly along the line of the original object, so I don't want you to get confused by that. All right, so again, this one comes down. Let's change the color to blue. This one comes down, and halfway from the original line it cuts off, and then halfway back it cuts off. And so what I did is I looked at this and went, okay, so here's the original shadow. So halfway there has got to go connect back to this diagonal corner. So I just cut off that little bit there. So that's the shadow of that diagonal basically. And then it meets up with the original top part of the blue shadow. So I think, hopefully that explains everything. Thanks for watching. This is Brian.